Captain Yuna Park stood at the bridge of the horizon's edge and watched the stars through the wide viewing window. The ship had been traveling for 3 years now, moving deeper into space than any human vessel had ever gone. 340 crew members called this ship their home. They had left behind families, friends, and everything they knew on Earth. They did this because they believed in something bigger than themselves. They believed humanity was ready to meet whoever else lived among the stars. Yuna was 42 years old. She had short black hair and tired eyes that had seen too many sleepless nights. But today, those eyes were wide with wonder. The ship's sensors had detected something impossible. There was another ship out there. It was not human. Lieutenant Do-Hwan Lee stood beside her. He was her tactical officer, a man who had spent 15 years in special forces before joining the space program. His body was covered in old scars, and his face rarely showed emotion, but even he could not hide his excitement. "Captain," he said quietly, "this is really happening." Yuna nodded. "Get Dr. Kang to the bridge, now." Dr. Soman Kang arrived within minutes. She was the ship's expert on alien life, though until today, that title had been mostly theoretical. She was a small woman with round glasses and a gentle smile. She had spent her entire career preparing for this moment. "They're trying to communicate," Soman said, studying her console. "I'm detecting patterns in their signals. Give me a few hours, and I think I can establish basic communication." Those hours felt like days. The entire crew waited in nervous silence. Some prayed. Others wrote messages to their families just in case, but most simply watched and hoped. Finally, Soman looked up with tears in her eyes. "I've done it. They call themselves the Velith. They say they represent something called the Galactic Council. 47 species. They've been watching us for centuries." Yuna felt her heart pound. "What do they want?" "They say they want to welcome us. They're inviting us to follow them to a meeting point." The crew erupted in celebration. People hugged each other and cried. After thousands of years of wondering if humanity was alone in the universe, they finally had their answer. They were not alone. And the universe seemed friendly. Yuna followed every protocol that Earth had established for first contact. She kept weapons offline. She broadcast messages of peace in every format they could manage. She ordered her crew to appear non-threatening. Humanity would make a good first impression. She would make sure of that. The Velith ship was beautiful. It was silver and smooth, shaped like a curved blade. It moved through space with a grace that made human ships look clumsy. As the horizon's edge followed it toward the meeting point, Yuna allowed herself to feel hope. Maybe the universe was kinder than humanity had feared. Do-Hwan was the first to notice something wrong. His soldier's instincts had kept him alive through dozens of battles on Earth. Those instincts were screaming now. "Captain," he said, his voice low, "their weapon systems just powered up." Yuna frowned. "That must be a mistake. Open a channel. Ask them—" She never finished her sentence. The Velith ship fired. A beam of blue light cut through space and struck the horizon's edge in its center. The ship shook violently. Alarms screamed. People fell to the floor. "We're hit!" someone shouted. "Hull breach on decks 4 through 7. Yuna grabbed her console to stay standing. "Return fire! All weapons!" "Our weapons are offline," Do-Hwan shouted back. "We followed protocol. We never armed them." Another blast hit the ship. Then another. The horizon's edge was being torn apart piece by piece. Fire spread through the corridors. The screams of the dying filled the communication channels. Soman grabbed Yuna's arm. "Why? Why are they doing this?" Yuna had no answer. She only knew that her ship was dying, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. Do-Hwan fought his way to an emergency console. His fingers moved fast as explosions rocked the ship around him. "Captain, I can launch the emergency beacon. It will record everything and send it back to Earth." They'll know what happened here. Yuna looked at her dying ship. She looked at her dying crew. She thought of her daughter back on Earth, only 12 years old, waiting for her mother to come home. "Do it," she said. Do-Hwan launched the beacon. A small pod shot away from the horizon's edge just as the final blast tore the ship in half. In her last moment, Yuna saw the stars one more time. She thought they looked cold now, cold and uncaring. She had come to space believing in the goodness of the universe. She died knowing she was wrong. The beacon traveled for 11 months. It crossed empty space, carrying its terrible cargo of footage and data. It carried the faces of 340 people who had died for the crime of being curious. It carried the truth. When the beacon finally reached Earth's lunar command, Admiral Byung-ho Cho was the first to view its contents. He was an old man, 63 years old, with white hair and a face like carved stone. He had fought in 3 wars on Earth. He thought he understood violence. He was wrong. He watched the footage in complete silence. He watched the horizon's edge die. He watched Captain Park's final moments. He watched the Velith ship fly away, leaving nothing but wreckage and bodies floating in the void. When the footage ended, Byung-ho sat alone in the dark room. His hands were shaking, but it was not fear that made them shake. It was something else. Something the Velith had never encountered in their 12,000 years of existence. It was human rage, cold, patient, and absolute. Byung-ho picked up his communication device and called the Secretary General of the United Earth Government. "Sir," he said, his voice steady despite the fire burning in his chest, "we need to talk. Humanity has just received a declaration of war, and we are going to answer it." Outside the window, Earth hung in the blackness of space, blue and green and beautiful, home to 8 billion people who did not yet know that everything had changed. But they would know soon, and when they did, the galaxy would learn a terrible lesson about what happens when you awaken the fury of humanity. The Galactic Council Chamber was the oldest structure in known space. It floated at the heart of Nexus Prime, a massive station that had existed for 12,000 years. 47 species sent representatives here. They believed they ruled the galaxy with wisdom and fairness. They believed they were civilized. High Arbiter Thesson sat at the center of the great circular room. He was Velith, the same species that had destroyed the horizon's edge. His skin was pale blue, and his eyes were large and black like pools of ink. He had led the council for 300 years. In all that time, he had never felt fear. Why would he? The council was supreme. No one challenged them. No one could. Today, however, something unusual was happening. The primitive species from the small blue planet had sent a representative. Thesson found this amusing. The humans had somehow intercepted council communications and learned how to travel to Nexus Prime. Impressive for such a young species, but ultimately meaningless. They were Category 7 primitives. They were nothing. The doors of the chamber opened. Ambassador Kiyori-O walked in alone. She was 38 years old, a diplomat who had spent her career resolving conflicts between nations on Earth. She had been chosen for this mission because she could stay calm in any situation. She had been given one instruction before leaving Earth: find out why the Council attacked, and deliver humanity's response. Curie walked to the center of the chamber. Hundreds of alien eyes watched her. Some of the species looked almost human. Others were so strange that her mind struggled to understand what she was seeing. But she kept her face calm and her back straight. She would not show weakness. Thesson looked down at her with something like boredom. "You are the human representative." "I am," Curie said. "I am here to ask why your ships destroyed our vessel without warning. 340 of our people died. We did nothing to threaten you." Thesson made a sound that might have been a laugh. "You do not understand. You cannot understand. The Council has maintained peace in this galaxy for 12,000 years. We do this by removing threats before they grow. We were not a threat. We came in peace. All young species say this, Thesson replied. But we have studied your world. We have watched your broadcasts and intercepted your communications. Your species has been at war with itself since you first walked upright. You have weapons capable of destroying your own planet. You are violent by nature, dangerous. He leaned forward. The destruction of your ship was preventative cleansing. Standard protocol. We have done it more than 200 times. Kiori felt ice in her stomach. 200 species, wiped out before they could ever reach the stars, and the Council spoke of it like routine paperwork. You murdered innocent explorers, she said, keeping her voice steady. Unarmed people who came offering friendship. We protected the galaxy, Thesson corrected. Your feelings on the matter are irrelevant. The Council has decided that humanity is too dangerous to exist as a spacefaring species. You have two choices. You may accept our rule and serve us as a labor species, or you may refuse and we will sterilize your planet. The chamber was silent. The other Council members watched with mild interest. They had seen this scene play out many times before. Young species always reacted the same way. They begged, they cried, they threatened. In the end, they always broke. Curie did something unexpected. She smiled. It was not a warm smile. It was not a friendly smile. It was the smile of someone who knew something that others did not. Several Council members shifted uncomfortably in their seats. I would like to clarify, Kiori said. Those are the only options you offer? Slavery or death? Thesson nodded. Those are the only options. I see. Curie straightened her jacket. Then I am authorized to deliver humanity's response to your generous offer? She paused, and when she spoke again, her voice carried to every corner of the vast chamber. We decline both options. We choose a third path. Thesson frowned. There is no third path. There is now, Kiori said. You have made a mistake, High Arbiter. A terrible mistake. You looked at humanity and saw primitives. You saw our wars and thought us weak and divided. You were wrong. She took a step forward. Our wars made us strong. They taught us things your peaceful council has forgotten. They taught us how to suffer, how to sacrifice, how to hate. Her eyes locked with Thesson's. And how to destroy those who threaten our children. For the first time in 300 years, Thesson felt something cold move through his chest. He told himself it was not fear. It could not be fear. Humans were primitives. They had one small planet and a handful of crude ships. The Council commanded millions of vessels across thousands of worlds. You cannot win, he said. You must understand this. We have crushed species far more advanced than yours. Kiori turned to leave. At the door, she stopped and looked back. You have crushed species who had something to lose, she said. Species who feared death. Species who wanted to survive at any cost. She shook her head slowly. You killed 340 of our people, including parents, children, friends, and lovers. You do not understand what you have awakened. You cannot understand. But you will learn. She walked out. The doors closed behind her. The council chamber erupted in confused discussion. Some members laughed. Others looked worried. Thesson sat in silence, trying to convince himself that the cold feeling in his chest meant nothing. On Earth, Secretary General Taehyun Bayek stood before the United Nations. The assembly hall was packed. Every nation on Earth had sent representatives. Every screen on the planet was broadcasting this moment. Citizens of Earth, Beck said, his voice heavy with grief and steel. 3 days ago, we learned that we are not alone in the universe. We also learned that the universe is not kind. An alien government called the Galactic Council destroyed one of our ships without warning. They killed 340 innocent people. They have demanded our surrender or our extinction. He paused, letting the words sink in. They believe we will surrender. They believe we will beg for mercy. They believe we are weak because we fight among ourselves. His voice rose. They do not understand that our conflicts have forged us. They do not understand that when an outside enemy threatens our home, humanity does not divide. We unite. We become something our enemies cannot imagine. Behind him, screens showed Earth's military forces mobilizing. Ships launched from every continent. Factories that had built weapons for human wars now turned their production toward a new enemy. Scientists who had competed for prizes now worked together on technologies that would change everything. The Council asked for our response. Beck said, "Here it is. We will not surrender. We will not die quietly. We will show them what humanity is truly capable of. And when we are finished, the galaxy will never forget what happens when you murder our children." The assembly hall exploded in grim applause. There were no celebrations. This was not joy. This was resolve. This was the sound of a species preparing to fight for its survival. In the Galactic Council chamber, Thesson watched a recording of Bayek's speech. The cold feeling in his chest had grown stronger. For the first time in his long life, he wondered if perhaps the Council had made a mistake. 18 months had passed since the destruction of the horizon's edge. The Galactic Council watched Earth with mild curiosity, the way a giant might watch an ant building a tiny hill. They saw humanity constructing ships. They counted the vessels, 200, then 300, then 500. The numbers were laughable. The Council had millions of warships. What could 500 primitive vessels possibly do? High Arbiter Thesson received weekly reports on human activity. Each report said the same thing. The humans were building a fleet. The fleet was pathetic. There was nothing to worry about. Thesson believed these reports. He wanted to believe them. The cold feeling in his chest had never quite gone away since Ambassador O's visit, but he buried it deep. Humans were primitives. They could not threaten the Council. It was impossible. He was making the biggest mistake of his long life. Deep in the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter, Commander Yunji Shin floated in zero gravity aboard her ship, the Silent Knife. She was 40 years old, with a thin face and eyes that missed nothing. Before the Council's attack, she had commanded Earth's most secret Special Forces unit. Now she commanded something far more dangerous. The Silent Knife was not in any of the Council's reports. Neither were the 3,999 other ships hidden throughout human space. Earth had shown the Council a small fleet of visible ships. The real fleet was invisible. Yunji pulled herself to a viewing window and looked out at the asteroid field. Hidden among the rocks were hundreds of warships, painted black, running silent, waiting. This was just one of 12 hidden staging areas. The Council's spies saw nothing because there was nothing to see. Humans had learned the art of hiding from each other over thousands of years of war. Hiding from aliens who did not even suspect deception was easy. On Earth's moon, Chief Engineer Junho Kwon worked in a laboratory that did not officially exist. He was 35 years old, thin and pale from too many hours under artificial lights. He had not seen sunlight in 14 months. He did not care. He had work to do. On his workbench sat a weapon that would have horrified the Galactic Council. It was an antimatter warhead, small enough to fit in a missile, but powerful enough to crack a planet's crust. The Council had banned such weapons 8,000 years ago. They considered them too brutal for civilized warfare. Humans had never agreed to those rules. Junho looked at the warhead with something like love. "Beautiful," he whispered. "Absolutely beautiful." His assistant, a young woman named Jiwan Han, looked nervous. "Sir, are we sure about this? These weapons, they're monstrous." Junho turned to her with tired eyes. "The Council killed 340 of our people for the crime of saying hello. They plan to enslave or exterminate our entire species. They have done this to 200 other species. He pointed at the warhead. "This is not monstrous. This is necessary." Ji-won had no response to that. Meanwhile, Admiral Byung-ho Cho sat in his command center on Luna, studying holographic maps of Council space. He had not slept more than 4 hours a night since the attack. Sleep felt like betrayal. How could he rest when so much work remained? A young officer approached him. "Admiral, we have captured another Council probe." Byung-ho nodded. "Bring it to the reverse engineering team, and bring me the pilot." The pilot was a small creature, barely a meter tall, with gray skin and 4 arms. It belonged to a species called the Nethic, servants of the Council. It trembled as human soldiers escorted it into the interrogation room. Byung-ho sat across from the creature. He did not threaten. He did not raise his voice. He simply talked. "You work for the Council," he said. "You spy on us and report what you see." The Nethic nodded, shaking. "What do you tell them about us?" The creature's voice was high and thin. "We tell them you are building ships. We tell them your fleet is small. We tell them you are not a threat." "And they believe this?" "Yes. The Council believes what it wants to believe. They think you are primitives. They think you cannot fight." Byung-ho leaned forward. "What do you think?" The Nethic was silent for a long moment. When it spoke again, its voice was barely a whisper. "I think the Council has made a terrible mistake. I have studied your species, your history, your wars." It looked up at Byung-ho with something like awe in its eyes. "You have been fighting each other since before my species learned to make fire. You have never stopped developing new ways to kill. You have weapons the Council abandoned as too horrible. And you—" It paused. "You are angry. Not hot anger. Cold anger. Patient anger. The most dangerous kind." Byung-ho smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "You are very observant. What will you do to me?" "Nothing. We will send you back to the Council with a message." "What message?" Byung-ho stood and walked to the door. "Tell them to count their ships again. Tell them to look harder. Tell them that what they see is not what exists." He looked back at the trembling creature. "And tell High Arbiter Thesson that Admiral Byung-ho Cho sends his regards. We will meet soon." The Nethic delivered the message. The Council laughed. They scanned human space again and again. They found nothing new. The humans were bluffing. They had to be bluffing. In the hidden shipyards, Commander Yoonji Shin gathered her Phantom Corps for a final briefing. These were the best soldiers humanity had ever produced. They had trained for months in alien combat tactics. They had studied Council weaknesses. They were ready. "We begin surgical strikes tomorrow," Yoonji told them. "Small outposts, listening stations. We leave no survivors. We leave no evidence. The Council will blame pirates. They will blame each other. They will never suspect us." A soldier raised his hand. "What if they do suspect?" Yoonji's smile was cold as space itself. "Then they will learn to fear us even sooner." The strikes began. Council outposts went silent, one by one. Ships disappeared without a trace. The Council investigated and found nothing. They blamed criminal organizations. They blamed internal conflicts. The idea that primitive humans could operate so effectively, so invisibly, never crossed their minds. On the last night before the main fleet launched, Admiral Cho stood alone in his quarters. On his desk sat a photograph of Captain Yuna Park, recovered from her personnel file. She smiled in the picture. She had been so hopeful, so full of dreams. "I'm sorry we couldn't save you," he said to the photograph, "but I promise you this. They will pay for what they did. Every single one of them." He picked up his communicator and opened a channel to all 4,000 ships of the Hidden Fleet. "This is Admiral Cho. Operation Reckoning begins in 72 hours. Check your weapons. Check your systems. Say goodbye to your families." He paused, and when he spoke again, his voice was iron. "And prepare to show the galaxy what happens when you awaken the fury of humanity." Across human space, 4,000 ships began to move. The Ghost Fleet was rising, and the Galactic Council had no idea what was coming. The attack came without warning, just as the Velith attack on the horizon's edge had come without warning. But this time, humans were the hunters. At exactly midnight Earth time, 4,000 human warships emerged from hiding across 12 star systems simultaneously. They appeared like ghosts, materializing from asteroid fields and dark nebulae where Council sensors had seen nothing. Within the first hour, 37 Council military installations were destroyed. High Arbiter Thesson was asleep when the alarms began. He stumbled into the Council chamber still wearing his sleeping robes, his large black eyes wide with disbelief. Screens around the room showed chaos. Human ships everywhere, Council defenses crumbling. "This is impossible," he whispered. "Where did they come from?" No one had an answer. Admiral Byung-ho Cho stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Vengeance. Around him, his crew worked with calm efficiency. They had trained for this moment for 18 months. They were ready. "Admiral," his communications officer reported, "the Council is attempting to coordinate a defense. They're calling ships from across their territory." Byung-ho nodded. "Good. Let them gather their forces. We want them in one place." This was the human strategy. The Council had millions of ships spread across thousands of light years. Humans could not fight them all. But if they could draw the Council's main fleet to one location, if they could deliver a single devastating blow, they could break the Council's will to fight. The main target was Nexus Prime, the heart of Council power. But first, there was another target, a more personal one. Commander Yoonji Shin led her Phantom Corps toward Velith Prime, the homeworld of the species that had destroyed the horizon's edge. Her fleet was smaller, only 200 ships, but these were the fastest and deadliest vessels humanity had built. They carried something more dangerous than weapons. They carried human soldiers ready to fight on the ground. "Commander," her pilot said, "we're approaching Velith Prime. Their orbital defenses are activating." Yoonji studied the tactical display. The Velith had powerful defense platforms circling their planet. Any normal fleet would have to fight for days to break through. Yoonji was not planning a normal approach. "All ships," she ordered, "activate Protocol Thunderbolt. We're going straight through." Protocol Thunderbolt was simple and insane. The ships would accelerate to maximum speed and fly directly at the defense platforms. Most species would never attempt this. The risk of collision was too high. The damage would be catastrophic. Humans had been flying aircraft into enemy positions since World War II. This was nothing new. The Phantom Corps hit the Velith defenses like a hammer. Ships exploded on both sides. The formation broke through the gaps, leaving burning wreckage behind. Within minutes, they were in orbit over Velith Prime. The Velith expected orbital bombardment. Every species they had ever fought used the same tactics. Destroy the cities from space, kill millions with the press of a button. Clean and simple. Humans chose a different path. Transport ships descended through the atmosphere. Landing craft hit the ground around the capital city. Doors opened, and human soldiers poured out. Yoonji was the first to set foot on Velith Prime. She looked up at the alien sky, purple and strange, and felt nothing but cold purpose. Around her, her soldiers formed up in perfect ranks. "Remember," she told them, "no civilian casualties. Our fight is with their military. We are not monsters." "Understood, Commander." "Then move out, show them our faces, let them see exactly who is delivering justice." The ground battle lasted 12 hours. The Velith military fought desperately, but they had never faced anything like human infantry. These were soldiers whose ancestors had survived Stalingrad, Iwo Jima, the trenches of World War I. They knew how to fight in cities. They knew how to take ground, meter by meter. They knew how to terrify their enemies. By dawn, the Velith military command had surrendered. Their generals knelt in the ruins of their headquarters, surrounded by human soldiers. Yunji stood before them, her armor covered in dust and blood that was not hers. "You attacked our ship without warning," she said. "You killed our people. You planned to enslave our species." She leaned close to the highest-ranking general. "Remember this day. Remember that we could have destroyed your cities from orbit. We chose to come down here instead. We chose to let your civilians live. Remember our mercy, and pray you never see our true fury." At the same time, the main battle raged at Nexus Prime. Captain Minho Jung commanded the dreadnought Vengeful Spirit. His ship was the largest in the human fleet, built in secret over 18 months, armed with weapons that would have made the Council's military planners weep with terror. Its hull was 3 kilometers long and covered in armor that could withstand almost anything. The Council's defense grid around Nexus Prime was the strongest in the galaxy. Thousands of weapon platforms, force fields layered upon force fields, automated systems that could track and destroy anything that moved. It had never been breached in 12,000 years. Minho planned to breach it in 12 minutes. "All power to forward shields," he ordered. "Prepare for ramming speed." His first officer looked horrified. "Captain, if we hit those shields at full speed, we'll break through," Minho finished, "or we'll die trying. Either way, we'll make a hole big enough for the rest of the fleet." The Vengeful Spirit accelerated toward Nexus Prime. Weapons fire filled space around it. Shields flickered and groaned. The ship shook with impacts that would have destroyed lesser vessels. They hit the outer defense shield at full speed. The impact was visible from 1,000 kilometers away. The Vengeful Spirit's shields collapsed. Its outer hull cracked and burned, but the defense shield cracked too, creating a gap just wide enough for human ships to pour through. Minho pulled himself from the floor of his damaged bridge. Blood ran down his face. Half his crew was injured, but his ship was still moving, and the gap in the Council's defenses was growing wider every second. "All ships," he broadcast. "The door is open. Get in there and finish this." Human warships flooded through the breach. The battle became chaos. Council ships, unprepared for the ferocity of human tactics, fell by the hundreds. The humans used tricks the Council had never seen. Decoy ships, suicide runs, electronic warfare that confused and blinded enemy sensors. Admiral Cho watched the battle from his flagship. The plan was working. The Council's defenses were collapsing faster than predicted. "Admiral," his officer reported, "High Arbiter Thesson is broadcasting a surrender. He's begging for mercy." Cho's face showed no emotion. He remembered the footage from the horizon's edge. He remembered Captain Yuna Park's final moments. "Put him on screen." Thesson's face appeared, twisted with fear. "Please," he said, his voice shaking. "We surrender. We will give you anything you want. Just stop the attack." Cho stood and walked closer to the screen. "You showed no mercy to 340 innocent explorers. You planned to enslave or destroy our entire species. You have done this to 200 other species over 12,000 years. His voice was steady. "You will receive what you gave. Please, your military will be dismantled. Your weapons will be destroyed. Your empire will end." Cho paused. "But your civilians will be spared. Your species will survive. Not because you deserve mercy, but because we are not you." He turned off the transmission. The battle continued for 96 more hours. When it finally ended, the Council's military power was broken. Their great fleet was scattered debris. Their station at Nexus Prime was occupied by human soldiers. Thessan knelt in the ruins of the Council chamber, surrounded by the species he had once ruled. Human soldiers stood around him in a silent circle. Admiral Cho walked through the rubble and stood before the creature who had ordered the death of the Horizon's Edge crew. "We could destroy your entire species, Cho said quietly. We have weapons that could crack your planet like an egg. We choose not to use them. He crouched down to look Thesson in the eyes. Not because we are weak, because we are better than you. He stood and turned to face the Council's recording devices, still broadcasting to the entire galaxy. Let this be remembered, he said. Humanity came to the stars in peace. You answered with murder. We answered with war. This war is over, but our lesson remains. Attack humanity, and you will face consequences beyond your imagination. We are not primitives. We are not victims. We are humanity, and we remember everything. He walked away, leaving Thesson kneeling in the dust of his broken empire. 1 year had passed since the Battle of Nexus Prime. The galaxy was forever changed. The Galactic Council still existed, but it was not the same council that had ruled with an iron fist for 12,000 years. 14 species that had supported the attack on humanity now operated under strict military restrictions. Their warships had been dismantled. Their weapons factories had been converted to civilian use. They would never again have the power to destroy a young species simply for existing. The policy of preventative cleansing was abolished. The 200 species that had been erased from history would never return, but no more would join them. Humanity had made sure of that. Ambassador Kiyori O sat in her office on Nexus Prime, looking out at the stars. She was now Earth's permanent representative to the Reformed Council, a position she had never imagined when she first walked into the council chamber to deliver humanity's defiance. Her hair had gone gray at the temples. The weight of the past 2 years showed in the lines on her face, but her eyes were still sharp, still watchful. Her door chimed. Come in. A young Velith entered. His name was Veth, and he represented the new generation of his species, those who had grown up watching their elders' empire crumble. He was small for his kind, with pale blue skin and nervous movements. Ambassador O, he said, bowing slightly. Thank you for seeing me. Kiyori gestured to a chair. Sit. What do you want to discuss? Veth sat at the edge of the chair, clearly uncomfortable. I have been trying to understand something. For 12,000 years, my people dominated this galaxy. We crushed anyone who threatened us. We were powerful beyond imagination. He looked at her with genuine confusion. How did you defeat us? You had less than 5,000 ships. We had millions. You should have been destroyed. Kiyori considered the question. It was a fair one. Many species in the galaxy were asking the same thing. You made several mistakes, she said. First, you underestimated us. You saw our internal conflicts and thought we were weak. You didn't understand that our conflicts made us strong. We spent thousands of years learning how to fight, how to adapt, how to survive against impossible odds. She leaned back in her chair. Second, you gave us time. 18 months between the attack and our response. 18 months was enough for us to prepare. But your technology was inferior to ours. In some ways, yes. But technology is not everything. You had powerful weapons, but you forgot how to use them creatively. You had been at peace so long that you forgot what real war looks like. We never forgot. Veth was quiet for a moment. There is another question I must ask. After you won, why did you spare us? You could have destroyed our entire species. Many in your government wanted exactly that. Kiyori's face softened slightly. Because we are not you. We came to the stars believing in peace. Your people tried to take that belief from us. They almost succeeded. But in the end, we chose to remember who we wanted to be, not just who we had to become to survive. Veth nodded slowly. My people do not understand mercy. We see it as weakness. Then your people have much to learn. On Earth's moon, a memorial stood in a garden of genetically modified flowers that could bloom in the low gravity. The memorial was a simple wall of black stone, etched with 340 names, the names of the crew of the Horizon's Edge. Today, a ceremony was being held. Hundreds of people gathered around the memorial, including families of the fallen, government officials, and military officers. But the speaker was not a politician or a general. She was a young woman named Ha-Young Kang, the daughter of Dr. Somin Kang, the xenobiologist who had died on the horizon's edge. Ha-Young was 26 years old now. She had her mother's gentle face and round glasses, but her eyes held something harder than her mother's had. She had grown up in a galaxy at war. She had chosen to become a diplomat, to carry her mother's dream of peace into the future. She stood before the crowd and began to speak. My mother believed in the goodness of the universe. She spent her life preparing to meet other species, dreaming of friendship among the stars. She died because she was right. There are other species out there. She was just wrong about their nature. Ha-Young paused, looking at the names on the wall. For a long time I was angry. Angry at the Velith for killing her. Angry at the universe for being cruel. Angry at my mother for being naive enough to believe in peace. Her voice cracked slightly, but she continued. But as I grew older, I realized something. My mother was not naive. She knew the universe might be dangerous. She went anyway. Because she believed that reaching out in friendship was worth the risk. Because she believed that fear should not stop us from trying to find connection. She looked back at the crowd. We answered her death with war. We had to. The council gave us no choice. But now the war is over, and we must decide what comes next. Will we become like the species that attacked us? Will we rule through fear and destroy anyone who might threaten us? She shook her head. My mother would not have wanted that. And I believe humanity is better than that. She straightened her shoulders. Today, humanity stands as a guardian of the weak. Species that were scheduled for cleansing now fly under our protection. We have become what the Council should have been, protectors, not destroyers. This is my mother's legacy, not the war that avenged her, but the peace that followed. The ceremony ended with a moment of silence. Among the crowd, Admiral Byung-ho Cho stood apart, wearing civilian clothes. He was 70 years old now, retired from military service. His hair was completely white, and his body carried the weight of everything he had done. A young cadet approached him nervously. Admiral Cho, sir? Byung-ho looked at the young man. I'm not an admiral anymore, just a tired old man. Sir, I wanted to ask you something. The history books say you won the greatest military victory in human history, but when I look at you, you don't seem happy about it. Byung-ho was quiet for a long moment. He looked at the memorial wall, at the names of 340 people he had never met, but had sworn to avenge. Victory in war is never something to be happy about, he finally said. We did what we had to do. We protected our species. We saved countless other species from the same fate that almost befell us. But we also killed. We destroyed. We showed the universe that humanity can be just as terrible as anyone else. Do you think we did the right thing? Byung-ho sighed. We showed the galaxy that humanity will not be erased quietly. We showed them that attacking us has consequences beyond their imagination. And we showed them something they never expected, that after we won, we chose to build rather than destroy. He looked at the young cadet with tired eyes. Whether that makes us heroes or monsters, history will decide. But our children are safe. That's enough for me. He walked away, leaving the cadet to think about his words. In deep space, a human patrol fleet cruised through what had once been Council territory. They were not conquerors. They were guards, watching for any sign of trouble. Humanity had become the galaxy's reluctant guardian, a role they had never asked for but could not refuse. Commander Yoonji Shin stood on the bridge of her new ship, looking out at the stars. She had been offered a desk job after the war. She had refused. Her place was out here, among the stars, making sure no one ever repeated the Council's mistakes. A signal came through her communication system. Unknown ship approaching. Yunji straightened. Identity? Unknown species, sir. They're broadcasting a message. They say they are a young spacefaring species from the Outer Rim. They've heard about humanity and want to make contact. Yunji smiled slightly. This happened more often now. Young species reaching out to humanity instead of the Council, looking for protection, looking for friends. Open a channel, she said, and prepare a standard greeting. Let's give them a better first contact experience than we had. The unknown ship approached slowly, carefully. Its design was strange, biological curves mixed with metal plates, completely unlike anything in the Council's records. Yunji looked at it and felt something she had not felt in a long time. Hope. In her ready room, she kept a photograph of Captain Yuna Park. Sometimes, late at night, she talked to it. "We're doing it," she whispered. "We're meeting new species, making friends, protecting those who cannot protect themselves, just like you wanted." The photograph did not respond, but Yunji liked to think that somewhere, somehow, Yuna was watching and smiling. Outside, the stars stretched on forever. Humanity had taken its first steps into a hostile universe. They had stumbled, they had bled, they had fought with savage fury that left the galaxy stunned. But they had survived. And now they were building something new, something better. This was humanity's legacy. Not just war, but what came after. Not just vengeance, but justice. Not just survival, but hope. The galaxy would never forget the day humanity answered the Council's cruelty with fire and steel. But perhaps, in time, they would also remember the day humanity offered peace to a universe that had shown them none. That, Yunji thought as she watched the unknown ship dock with her vessel, was the true measure of humanity's strength. Not the ability to destroy, the ability to choose not to. She straightened her uniform and went to greet the newcomers. A new chapter was beginning, and this time it would start with friendship.